Just dump all 9 kids on her. She'll do anything for us. I heard my son's voice through the cracked kitchen door, and for a moment I thought I'd misheard. But then his wife Emily gave a little laugh, the kind that's meant to sound polite but is really just agreement in disguise. "She's already paid for the food," Emily said. "The least she can do is keep the kids upstairs." I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just stood there in the hallway, the grocery bag digging into my wrist and the catering receipt fluttering in my other hand. I'd come in through the side door like I always did, not wanting to interrupt, thinking I was being helpful. I thought if I handled the meal, they'd be grateful. I thought if I made things easy, I'd finally get to just be mom or grandma for a day. Not the default solution to every problem. Their voices floated from the kitchen, casual and amused, as if I were a piece of furniture, not a person. "You know she'll do it," Logan added. "She always does," I blinked. The receipt crinkled in my hand, and I realized I was squeezing it too tightly. The total, $1963.75, stood out in bold black ink. I hadn't even told them I was covering it. I just wanted Christmas to go smoothly this year. I thought if I handled the meal, they'd be grateful. I thought if I made things easy, I'd finally get to just be mom or grandma for a day. Not the default solution to every problem. I stepped back without making a sound, slipped out through the same side door I'd come in. My keys were still in my coat pocket. My car was cold. I sat for a minute before turning it on, not because I didn't know where to go, but because I didn't know where I stood anymore. He wasn't a cruel son, not overtly. He still called once a week, still hugged me when we met. But somewhere along the way, I'd stopped being a mother and started being the one who always said yes. The engine clicked to life. I pulled out of their driveway without sending a text or leaving a note. If they noticed I'd come and gone, they didn't say. That night, I laid the receipt flat on my kitchen counter, and for the first time in a long time, I asked myself what I was actually giving and what was ever given back. I lay in bed that night with the lights off, the hallway dim, and the words still playing on a loop in my head. Just dump all 9 kids on her, over and over, like a song I didn't ask to hear. I stared at the ceiling, and somewhere between midnight and morning, my memory wandered to every time I'd said yes. Logan's wife had a minor surgery once. I took over school pickups, dinners, even laundry. When Maria, my daughter-in-law's sister, had her 3rd child, I babysat the other 2 for an entire weekend because no one else could handle them. No payment, no sleep, just expectations dressed up as family values. My younger son Dylan moved to Oregon 6 years ago. He's different, quieter, more careful with what he asks of me, but he's far away. And Logan stayed local, which slowly translated into available and eventually into responsible for everything. It crept up gradually, helping with birthdays, then holidays, then childcare, just until they got back. It never stopped. This year I'd been promised rest. Logan said it after Thanksgiving, standing in my kitchen, poking through the cranberry leftovers. "You've done enough, Mom. We'll take care of Christmas this year. Just show up and relax." I believed him. The following week, I prepaid for catering. It was supposed to be my gift. I didn't tell them. I just thought it might ease the load for everyone, make things simple. But now, as I lay in the dark, the receipt on the counter and the words echoing in my mind, I realized something had to change. For the first time in years, I wondered what would happen if I didn't say yes, if I didn't show up, if I made a plan of my own. Earlier that week, my life had been full of warmth and anticipation. I decorated the house, wrapped presents, and baked cookies, imagining the laughter and chaos of a family Christmas. I thought I knew my place in their lives. I thought I knew my children. But I was about to find out just how wrong I was. Evelyn's house was the kind of place that always smelled like cinnamon and fresh coffee, no matter the season. The living room was small but inviting, with a faded blue sofa, a crocheted afghan draped over the back, and a wall of family photos that stretched from the front door to the kitchen. There were pictures of Logan and Dylan as boys, grinning with missing teeth, and more recent ones of her 9 grandchildren, some in Halloween costumes, some in soccer uniforms, all of them with the same bright eyes and stubborn chins that ran in the family. The kitchen table was always set for company, even if it was just Evelyn and her crossword puzzle, and the garden out back was her pride, roses, tomatoes, and a little patch of mint that the grandkids loved to pick for their lemonade. Evelyn had always been the matriarch, the one who remembered every birthday, who baked the pies for Thanksgiving, who sent cards and small gifts for every occasion. She was the one who kept the family together after her husband passed, the one who made sure the boys never missed a doctor's appointment, the one who stayed up late sewing costumes and helping with homework. She'd worked as a school secretary for 30 years, saving every penny so her sons could go to college. She'd never remarried, never even dated. Telling herself that her family was enough, Logan, her eldest, had always been the golden boy, charming, ambitious, and, as he got older, a little too used to getting his way. He'd married Emily, a woman with a quick smile and a sharper tongue, who seemed to believe that motherhood was a team sport best played from the sidelines. Emily was always busy, always tired, always just a little bit put out by the chaos of 9 children. She managed the family's social calendar with military precision, but when it came to the day-to-day work of raising kids, she was quick to delegate, to Evelyn, to the babysitter. To anyone who would say yes, Dylan, the younger son, was quieter, more thoughtful. He'd moved to Oregon years ago, chasing a job and a quieter life. He called every Sunday, sent postcards from his hikes, and always asked how Evelyn was holding up. He worried about her, but he was too far away to help with the daily grind. Evelyn missed him fiercely, but she understood. Not everyone was built for the noise and mess of a big family. The grandchildren were the light of Evelyn's life. She knew each of their favorite foods, their allergies, their bedtime routines. She kept a drawer full of art supplies and board games, and she never minded the mess they left behind. She loved the way they piled onto her lap for story time, the way they fought over who got to help her in the kitchen, the way they whispered secrets in her ear. She told herself that all the work, all the babysitting, the school pickups, the sleepovers, was worth it for these moments. But as the years passed, Evelyn began to notice the subtle ways she was being edged out of her own life. Logan and Emily made decisions without her, planned vacations and holidays, and then informed her of her role. "We'll drop the kids off at noon, Mom. You know the drill." Emily would text, never asking, always telling. Logan would call to check in, but the conversations were short, distracted, full of background noise and half-finished sentences. The grandchildren, growing older, started to see her less as a source of wisdom and more as a convenient solution to their parents' problems. Evelyn tried not to mind. She told herself it was natural, that children grow up and move on, that families change. She tried to be helpful without being intrusive, to offer advice only when asked, to keep her opinions to herself. She baked extra casseroles, stocked the freezer with meals, and kept the guest room ready for sleepovers. She never complained, never asked for thanks, never let on how tired she was. But sometimes, late at night, Evelyn wondered what would happen if she stopped. If she stopped calling, stopped baking, stopped reminding them of all the little things that held them together. Would they notice? Would they care? Or would they simply move on, their lives unchanged by her absence? The holidays were always the hardest. Evelyn loved Christmas, the lights, the music, the smell of pine and gingerbread. She decorated the house from top to bottom, hung stockings for every grandchild, and spent weeks planning the menu. She wanted everything to be perfect, to give her family the kind of Christmas they'd remember long after she was gone. She paid for catering this year, hoping it would make things easier for everyone, hoping it would be her gift to the family. But as Christmas approached, Evelyn began to notice small things that made her uneasy. Logan and Emily whispered in the kitchen, their voices low and urgent. She caught Emily glancing at her phone during dinner, texting with someone, and then quickly tucking the phone away when Evelyn looked her way. Logan seemed distracted, always checking the time, always in a hurry to leave. The grandchildren were unusually quiet, their eyes darting between their parents and their grandmother, as if they knew something she didn't. One evening, as Evelyn was cleaning up after dinner, she overheard Logan and Emily talking in the hallway. Their voices were muffled, but she caught enough to make her heart race. "She'll do it," Logan said. "She always does. We just have to make it sound like it's for the kids." Emily laughed, her voice sharp. "She's already paid for everything. The least she can do is keep them out of our hair for a week." Evelyn stood in the kitchen, her hands clenched around a dish towel, her mind spinning. She realized in that moment that she had been too trusting, too willing to believe that her family would never take advantage of her. She felt a chill settle in her bones, a sense of unease that she couldn't shake. If only they knew what she was capable of, how much she noticed, how much she remembered, how fiercely she could fight when pushed. Evelyn felt a slow burn of anger begin to replace her sadness. She was tired of being dismissed, tired of being taken for granted. She resolved to keep her eyes open, to trust her instincts, to be ready for whatever was coming. And as she stood in the quiet kitchen, the warmth of the holiday lights flickering around her, Evelyn realized that the season's joy was giving way to a chill she couldn't ignore. Something was wrong, and she was determined to find out what it was, no matter what it cost her. The day it all came crashing down, the house was filled with the scent of cinnamon and pine. I'd spent the morning stringing popcorn garlands with the youngest grandkids, their sticky fingers and giggles echoing through the living room. The tree was up, the stockings were hung, and the kitchen counters were crowded with platters of cookies and pies. I'd just finished setting the table for Christmas Eve dinner when I realized I'd left the catering receipt in my car. I slipped on my coat and stepped out the side door, careful not to let the cold air follow me in. That's when I heard them, Logan and Emily, standing just inside the kitchen, their voices low but clear through the cracked door. "Just dump all 9 kids on her. She'll do anything for us," Logan said, his tone casual, almost amused. Emily gave a little laugh, the kind that stings more than any insult. "She's already paid for the food. The least she can do is keep the kids upstairs. We deserve a break, Logan. We need this." I froze, the grocery bag digging into my wrist, the receipt fluttering in my other hand. I hadn't told them I was covering the meal. I just wanted Christmas to go smoothly this year. I thought if I handled the food, they'd be grateful. I thought if I made things easy, I'd finally get to just be mom or grandma for a day, not the default solution to every problem. "You know she'll do it," Logan added. "She always does. She never says no." Emily's voice softened, but the words were sharp. "She's not going anywhere. She doesn't have a life. She lives for this. Let her have her moment. We'll be in Cabo by noon." I felt the blood drain from my face. I stepped back, careful not to make a sound, and slipped out through the same side door I'd come in. My keys were still in my coat pocket. My car was cold. I sat for a minute before turning it on, not because I didn't know where to go, but because I didn't know where I stood anymore. I'd always believed that family meant showing up, saying yes, being there no matter what. But now, I realized I was just the backup plan, the one who made everything work so everyone else could have their fun. I drove home in silence, the radio off, the only sound the crunch of tires on icy pavement. I thought about all the times I'd said yes, when Emily had her surgery and I took over school pickups, dinners, even laundry. When Maria, my daughter-in-law's sister, had her 3rd child, and I babysat the other 2 for an entire weekend because no one else could handle them. No payment, no sleep, just expectations dressed up as family values. I thought about Dylan, my younger son, who lived too far away to help, who called every Sunday but never asked for anything. I thought about Logan, who'd stayed local, which slowly translated into available and eventually into responsible for everything. When I got home, I laid the receipt flat on my kitchen counter. The total, $119.6375, stared up at me, a reminder of how much I'd given without ever being asked. I sat at the table, the Christmas lights twinkling in the window, and let the hurt wash over me. I thought about all the years I'd spent making holidays magical, all the times I'd put everyone else first, all the times I'd told myself it was enough just to be needed. But as the hours passed, something inside me shifted. The sadness gave way to anger, and the anger gave way to resolve. I realized I didn't have to say yes this time. I didn't have to be the one who made everything work. I could make a different choice. I could change my plans. That night, I lay in bed, the words still playing on a loop in my head. Just dump all 9 kids on her, over and over, like a song I didn't ask to hear. I stared at the ceiling, and somewhere between midnight and morning, I decided that Christmas would be different this year. I would not be the family's safety net, their last resort, their invisible servant. I would not let them take me for granted one more time. The next morning I called Dylan. "I need a favor," I said, my voice steady. "Can you come home for Christmas? I think I need you here." He didn't hesitate. "Of course, Mom, I'll be there." I started making calls, quietly changing my plans. I canceled the catering order, called the church to volunteer for the Christmas dinner, and arranged for a few close friends to join me for a quiet meal at home. I didn't tell Logan or Emily. I didn't explain. I just let them believe everything was as it always was. But inside, I was different. I was done being the one who always said yes. I was done letting my family decide my worth. This Christmas, I would give myself the gift of saying no. And as I watched the snow fall outside my window, I wondered what would happen when Logan and Emily realized their plan had changed, and that I was no longer the woman they thought they knew. The days leading up to Christmas felt like walking through a fog. I went through the motions, wrapping presents, checking the pantry, watering the poinsettias in the window, but my mind was somewhere else. Every time the phone rang, I half expected it to be Logan or Emily calling to check in, to ask about the menu, to confirm drop-off times for the kids. But the phone stayed silent. I realized with a pang that they hadn't even noticed I'd come and gone that day. I was invisible, a fixture in the background of their lives, expected to be there, but never truly seen. I tried to distract myself with memories of happier holidays. I remembered the year Tom was still alive, when the boys were little, and the house was filled with laughter and the smell of gingerbread. I remembered the way Logan used to help me hang ornaments, his small hands careful and precise, his face lit up with excitement. I remembered Dylan's first Christmas home from college, the way he hugged me so tight I thought I'd break. Those memories felt like another life, a world where I was needed, cherished, and loved. But now, the house felt too big, too quiet. I caught myself listening for the sound of children's footsteps, for the slam of the screen door, for the chaos that used to fill every corner. Instead, there was only the ticking of the clock and the distant hum of the furnace. I tried to tell myself that I was better off this way, that I deserved a break, that I was finally putting myself first. But the ache in my chest wouldn't go away. The gossip started soon after. At the grocery store, I overheard two women whispering near the produce aisle. "Did you hear? Evelyn's not hosting Christmas this year. Logan and Emily are furious. They say she's being selfish." At church, Mrs. Harper gave me a pitying look and pressed my hand a little too tightly. "If you ever need anything, dear, you know where to find me." I forced a smile, but inside I was burning. I wanted to scream that I wasn't helpless, that I wasn't losing my mind, that I was still the same woman who had held her family together through every storm. The children sensed the tension, too. Olivia, my oldest granddaughter, called one evening, her voice hesitant. "Grandma, is everything okay? Mom and Dad are fighting a lot. They keep saying you're making things difficult." I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. "Everything's fine, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups just need to figure things out." But I could hear the worry in her voice, the way she clung to the hope that I could fix things, just like I always had. Emily's manipulations grew bolder. She sent group texts to the family, painting herself as the victim. We just wanted a little help, but apparently that's too much to ask. I guess some people don't care about family anymore. Logan followed suit, calling Dylan to complain. "Mom's being unreasonable. She's always been stubborn, but this is too much. We're just asking for 1 week. She can't even give us that." Dylan, bless him, stood up for me. He called after one of Logan's rants, his voice full of quiet anger. "Don't listen to them, Mom. You've done more than enough. You deserve a Christmas of your own." His words were a balm, a reminder that not everyone saw me as a convenience, but the worst was yet to come. One afternoon, as I was sorting through the mail, I found an envelope addressed to Logan, tucked behind a stack of catalogs. The return address was a bank I didn't recognize. Curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it. Inside was a notice of overdue payments, a warning that their mortgage was in jeopardy. My heart pounded as I read the letter. Logan and Emily were in trouble, serious trouble. That's why they needed me to take the kids. That's why they were so desperate for a break. I felt a surge of anger, sharper than anything I'd felt before. They hadn't just taken me for granted. They'd lied to me, used me to cover up their own mistakes. I realized in that moment that I was done being their safety net. I was done cleaning up their messes. That night, I called Marjorie, my oldest friend. She listened quietly as I poured out the whole story, the overheard conversation, the canceled catering, the overdue mortgage. When I finished, she was silent for a moment, then said, "You've always been the strong one, Evelyn. Maybe it's time to let them see what happens when you stop saying yes." I took Marjorie's words to heart. For the first time in years, I let myself imagine a Christmas that wasn't built around everyone else's needs. I called the church and volunteered to help with their holiday dinner for families who had nowhere else to go. I signed up for a baking class at the community center, something I'd always wanted to do, but never had the time for. I even invited a few friends over for a quiet Christmas Eve. Just us, no expectations, no chaos, just warmth and laughter. But the tension with Logan and Emily only grew. They called, texted, and left voicemails, each message more frantic than the last. "Mom, you can't do this to us. We need you. The kids need you." Emily's tone shifted from pleading to angry. "You're being selfish, Evelyn. You're ruining Christmas for everyone." I listened to each message, then deleted it. I was done being manipulated. The grandchildren, caught in the middle, started to ask questions. Little Ben, only 6, called me one night. "Grandma, are you mad at Mommy and Daddy? Did I do something wrong?" My heart broke, but I reassured him. "No, sweetheart. You didn't do anything wrong. Grown-ups just have to figure things out sometimes. I love you very much." Olivia, older and more perceptive, sent me a text. "Grandma, I know you're not the bad guy. I'm here if you need me." The days passed in a strange mix of freedom and guilt. I missed the noise, the mess, the feeling of being needed, but I also felt lighter, more myself than I had in years. I spent long afternoons in the garden, letting the cold air clear my mind. I baked for the church, filling the kitchen with the scent of cinnamon and nutmeg. I read books, watched old movies, and let myself rest. But the family drama didn't stay quiet for long. Word spread quickly in our small town. At the grocery store, I overheard 2 women whispering, "Did you hear? Evelyn's refusing to watch the kids this year. Logan and Emily are beside themselves." At church, Mrs. Harper gave me a knowing look. "Sometimes you have to put your foot down, dear. Don't let them guilt you." I smiled, grateful for her support. One evening, as I was tidying up the living room, I found a letter tucked under the front door. It was from Emily, her handwriting sharp and hurried. "If you don't help us, we'll have no choice but to tell the family about your little secret. Think carefully before you ruin Christmas for everyone." My hands shook as I read the words. What secret? I racked my brain, trying to remember anything that could be used against me. Was it the money I'd lent Dylan years ago? The time I'd covered for Logan when he lost his job? Or was it something else, something I'd forgotten? The threat hung over me like a storm cloud, but instead of fear, I felt a strange sense of calm. I realized that Emily was desperate, that she was losing control. I decided then and there that I wouldn't let her threats dictate my life. I would face whatever came next with my head held high. Christmas Eve arrived, and for the first time in decades, my house was quiet. I set the table for 3, myself, Marjorie, and Olivia, who had decided to spend the night with me. We ate, laughed, and shared stories, the warmth of friendship filling the space where family drama used to live. As we exchanged small gifts, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. But as the night wore on, I couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come. I knew Logan and Emily wouldn't give up easily. I knew there were still secrets waiting to be uncovered, still battles to be fought. But for the first time, I felt ready. I was no longer the woman who always said yes. I was Evelyn, a mother, a grandmother, and a woman who had finally learned to stand up for herself. Evelyn's kitchen became her war room. The table, once reserved for family meals and homework, was now covered in neat stacks of documents, a spiral notebook, and her old laptop. She started by making a list of every time she'd been asked to watch the grandchildren, every holiday she'd hosted, every expense she'd quietly covered. She dug out receipts for catering, grocery bills, and even the check she'd written for Logan and Emily's last mortgage payment when they'd been in a pinch. The more she wrote, the more she realized just how much she'd given and how little she'd ever asked for in return. Marjorie was her first ally. "You need to protect yourself, Evelyn," she said, her voice firm as they sipped tea at the kitchen table. If they're threatening to expose some secret, you need to be ready. And you need to let the rest of the family know what's really going on. Together, they drafted a letter to Dylan explaining everything, what Evelyn had overheard, the threats, the years of being taken for granted. Dylan called the next day, his voice full of concern and anger. "I'm coming home, Mom. I'll help you. You're not alone in this." Olivia, too, became a quiet force. She started gathering her own evidence, screenshots of group texts, emails from Emily, even a recording of a conversation she'd had with her father where he admitted, "Mom will do whatever we ask." She always has. Olivia's loyalty gave Evelyn strength. "You're teaching me how to stand up for myself, Grandma," she said one night as they sorted through paperwork. "I'm proud of you." Evelyn's resourcefulness surprised even herself. She met with a lawyer at the community center who explained her rights and helped her draft a formal letter to Logan and Emily, outlining her boundaries and the legal consequences of further threats or attempts at coercion. "You have more power than you think," the lawyer told her. "Don't let them bully you." But the tension in the family only grew. Emily sent more messages, each one more desperate than the last. "If you go through with this, you'll regret it. The family will never forgive you. You'll lose everyone," Logan called, his voice tight with anger. "Why are you doing this, Mom? Why are you tearing the family apart?" Evelyn listened, but she didn't waver. She knew that standing up for herself meant risking their anger, their disappointment, even their absence. But she also knew she couldn't go back to the way things were. The gossip in town reached a fever pitch. At the grocery store, people whispered behind her back. At church, some friends offered support, while others kept their distance. Evelyn held her head high, refusing to let their judgment shake her resolve. She focused on what mattered, protecting herself, telling the truth, and making sure her grandchildren knew she loved them, no matter what. As Christmas Day approached, Evelyn finalized her plans. She arranged for Dylan and Olivia to stay with her, invited Marjorie and a few close friends for dinner, and let the church know she'd be volunteering at the holiday meal. She canceled the catering order for Logan and Emily's house, sent a polite but firm message explaining that she would not be available to watch the children, and blocked Emily's number after one last, venomous voicemail. But the night before Christmas, a letter arrived, slipped under her door. The handwriting was unfamiliar, but the message was unmistakable. "If you go through with this, you'll regret it. Family is everything. Don't ruin it for everyone." Evelyn stared at the note, her heart pounding. For a moment, the old fear threatened to return, but she pushed it aside. She was done being intimidated. She tucked the note into her folder of evidence, another reminder of what she was up against, and of how far she'd come. That night, as she sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by the evidence of her life, Evelyn felt a sense of calm. She had done everything she could. She had allies, she had a plan, and she had a strength she'd never known she possessed. She whispered a promise to herself, to Tom, to everyone who had ever doubted her. "I will not give up. I will not be erased. Tomorrow I fight." She lay down, her mind clear, her heart steady. She knew the battle would be hard, that Emily and Logan would do everything in their power to win. But Evelyn was ready. She had the truth, she had her allies, and she had a new sense of self-worth that no one could take away. As the clock ticked toward midnight, Evelyn closed her eyes and let herself rest. The next day would bring the confrontation she'd been dreading and preparing for. But for the first time in years, she felt ready. Whatever happened next, she would face it with courage and dignity. Christmas morning dawned cold and bright, the world outside dusted with a thin layer of snow. I woke before sunrise, my heart pounding with a strange mix of dread and resolve. The house was quiet, but I could feel the tension in the air, as if the walls themselves were bracing for what was to come. I made coffee, set out cinnamon rolls for Dylan and Olivia, and tried to steady my hands as I arranged the evidence I'd gathered. Emails, receipts, the threatening note, and the letter from my lawyer. Today, I would finally speak my truth. By mid-morning, the phone began to ring. First it was Logan, his voice tight and angry. "Mom, where are you?" "The kids are all packed. We're waiting for you to pick them up." I took a deep breath, my voice calm but firm. "I won't be coming, Logan. I told you. I'm not available this Christmas. I have plans of my own. There was a stunned silence on the other end, then a burst of outrage. You can't do this. We're counting on you. The kids are counting on you. I let him rant, then quietly hung up. Next came Emily, her tone icy. You're being selfish, Evelyn. You're ruining Christmas for everyone. If you don't show up, we'll tell the whole family about your secret. I almost laughed. Go ahead, Emily. I have nothing to hide. But you might want to think about what you're hiding before you start making threats. She sputtered, then hung up. Dylan and Olivia arrived soon after, their arms full of gifts and groceries. Dylan hugged me tight, his eyes full of pride. You did the right thing, Mom. It's about time someone stood up to them. Olivia squeezed my hand. We're with you, Grandma, no matter what. The day passed in a blur of laughter, music, and quiet joy. We ate, played games, and watched old movies, the house filled with warmth and love. But beneath it all, I could feel the storm brewing. I knew Logan and Emily wouldn't give up easily. That evening, as we were clearing the table, there was a loud knock at the door. I opened it to find Logan and Emily on the porch, their faces flushed with anger. The children stood behind them, wide-eyed and silent. We need to talk, Logan said, pushing past me into the living room. Emily followed, her voice sharp. You've embarrassed us, Evelyn. The whole family is talking. You've made us look like fools. I stood my ground, my voice steady. I'm not responsible for your choices, Emily. I'm done being your solution to every problem. I'm done being taken for granted. Logan's face twisted with frustration. You're our mother. It's your job to help us. You always have. I shook my head. No, Logan. My job was to raise you, to love you, to teach you right from wrong. I did that, but I'm not your servant. I'm not your scapegoat. I deserve respect, Emily scoffed. You think you're so noble, but you're just bitter. You can't stand that we have a life outside of you. I felt a surge of anger, but I kept my voice calm. I want you to have a life. I want you to be happy, but not at my expense. Not by using me, by lying to me, by threatening me. Dylan stepped forward, his voice quiet but firm. You both owe Mom an apology. She's done more for this family than anyone. It's time you started appreciating her. Logan glared at his brother. You don't understand. You're never here. You don't know what it's like, Dylan shook his head. I know enough. I know Mom deserves better. The room was thick with tension. The children watched, silent and confused. Olivia moved to stand beside me, her presence a quiet show of support. Emily tried one last time. If you don't help us, we'll tell everyone about the money you gave Dylan, about the loan you never paid back. I smiled, finally understanding. Go ahead, Emily. I have nothing to hide. But you might want to explain why you've been hiding your own financial troubles. Why you needed me to watch the kids so you could meet with the bank. Why you forged my signature on that catering order. Emily's face went white. Logan looked at her, confusion turning to shock. What is she talking about, Emily? I handed Logan the evidence, emails, receipts, the threatening note. You wanted the truth, Logan? Here it is. I've kept every record, every message, every threat. I know about the mortgage, about the overdue bills, about the money you borrowed from Dylan and never paid back. I know everything. The room fell silent. Logan stared at the papers, his hands shaking. Emily tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. The children began to cry, the tension finally breaking. I knelt down and hugged them, whispering that everything would be all right. I looked up at Logan and Emily, my voice gentle but firm. You have a choice. You can keep fighting, keep blaming me, keep hiding. Or you can start telling the truth. You can start making things right. No one expected what happened next. Logan broke down, tears streaming down his face. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I didn't know what else to do. We're drowning. We needed help, but I didn't know how to ask. Emily stood frozen, her eyes full of fear and regret. I just wanted to give the kids a good Christmas. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I hugged Logan, feeling the weight of years of resentment and pain begin to lift. It's not too late, son. We can fix this. But it starts with honesty. It starts with respect. The judge, my own conscience, had delivered the verdict. The outcome was still uncertain, but for the first time, I felt hope. The silence after Logan's apology was thick, broken only by the soft sniffles of the children and the distant ticking of the clock in the hallway. I looked at my son, his shoulders slumped, his eyes red, and felt a complicated ache. I wanted to be angry, to shout, to demand why he'd let things get so far. But all I could see was the little boy who used to run to me after a nightmare, who once believed I could fix anything. Emily sat on the edge of the sofa, her hands twisting in her lap. She looked smaller than I'd ever seen her, her confidence drained away. "I'm sorry, Evelyn," she whispered. "I thought I could handle it all. I thought if we just got through this Christmas, we'd figure something out. I never meant to hurt you." I sat down across from them, my hands folded in my lap. "You both need to understand something. I love you. I love these children. But love doesn't mean letting yourself be used. It doesn't mean saying yes to everything, no matter the cost. I've spent years putting everyone else first, and I'm tired. I deserve respect. I deserve honesty." Logan nodded, wiping his eyes. "You're right, Mom. We took you for granted. We didn't know how to ask for help without making it your problem." I shook my head gently. "You don't have to carry everything alone. But you do have to be honest. You do have to treat people with kindness, not just when it's convenient." The children, sensing the shift, crept closer. Olivia hugged me tightly, her voice muffled against my shoulder. "I'm sorry, Grandma. I didn't know what was happening. I just wanted everyone to be happy." I stroked her hair, my heart breaking and healing all at once. "It's not your fault, sweetheart. None of this is your fault." Dylan, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "We need to talk about what happens next. About the house, the money, the kids. We can't just pretend nothing happened." Logan nodded, his voice steadier. "We'll figure it out. I'll call the bank. I'll talk to the mortgage company. We'll make a plan." "But Mom, can you forgive us?" I looked at him, at Emily, at the children gathered around us. Forgiveness wasn't a switch I could flip, but I could see the sincerity in their eyes, the regret in their voices. "I can try," I said softly. "But things have to change. I won't go back to the way things were." Emily nodded, tears streaming down her face. "We'll do better. I promise." The rest of the day passed in a blur. We made sandwiches for lunch, the children playing quietly in the living room while the adults talked in hushed voices. Dylan helped Logan make a list of bills and debts, while Emily and I sat at the kitchen table, going over the catering receipts and the money I'd spent over the years. For the first time, Emily seemed to see me, not as a resource, but as a person. That evening, as the sun set and the house grew quiet, Logan and Emily gathered the children and prepared to leave. Logan hugged me tightly, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you, Mom, for everything, for not giving up on us." I hugged him back, feeling the weight of years of resentment and love. "Take care of your family, Logan, and take care of yourself." After they left, Dylan and Olivia stayed behind, helping me clean up. We sat together in the living room, the Christmas lights twinkling softly in the background. "You did it, Mom," Dylan said, his voice full of pride. "You stood up for yourself. You changed everything." I smiled, feeling a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it. Olivia squeezed my hand. "You taught me something important, Grandma. That it's okay to say no, that it's okay to put yourself first sometimes." We sat in comfortable silence, the warmth of family filling the room. I thought about the years I'd spent saying yes, about the times I'd put my own needs aside for the sake of others. I realized that I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting for every woman who had ever been taken for granted, for every grandmother who had ever been expected to give without receiving. As the night wore on, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought me here, the heartbreak, the anger, the slow realization that I deserved more, the courage it took to stand up, to say no, to demand respect, the relief of finally being seen, finally being heard. But even as I savored the victory, I knew the story wasn't over. There would be consequences, conversations with the rest of the family, changes in the way holidays were celebrated, new boundaries to be set and respected. There would be moments of doubt, moments when I wondered if I'd done the right thing. But for the first time, I felt ready to face whatever came next. The next morning, I woke to a quiet house and a sense of hope. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and watched the sun rise over the garden. I thought about the future, not just for myself, but for my children, my grandchildren, and the family we were still building, one honest conversation at a time. No one expected what happened next. The judge, my own conscience, had delivered the verdict, but the outcome was still uncertain. The dust had settled, but the story was far from over. The days after Christmas were quieter than I'd ever known. The phone didn't ring as much, and the house for once stayed tidy. I found myself moving slowly through the rooms, letting the silence settle around me like a soft blanket. There was a strange comfort in the emptiness, a sense of space I hadn't felt in years. I realized how much of my life had been filled with other people's needs, their noise, their chaos. Now, for the first time, I had room to breathe. Logan and Emily kept their distance at first. I heard from Dylan that they were struggling, facing the reality of their finances, scrambling to find last-minute childcare, learning to manage the household without my constant help. The children called sometimes, their voices small and uncertain. "Grandma, when can we come over?" I told them soon, that I loved them, that nothing would ever change that. But I knew things had to be different now. I couldn't go back to being the family's safety net, the invisible hand that made everything work. Word spread quickly through the family and the community. Some people called to offer support, to say they admired my courage. Others were less kind, whispering that I'd abandoned my family, that I was being selfish. I let their words wash over me, refusing to let them take root. I knew the truth. I knew what I'd endured, what I'd given, and what I'd finally reclaimed. Emily tried to reach out, sending a long, rambling email full of apologies and justifications. She wrote about the pressure she'd felt, the fear of losing control, the exhaustion of raising so many children. She admitted she'd been wrong, that she'd taken me for granted, that she was sorry for the things she'd said and done. I read her words carefully, feeling a mix of anger and compassion. I wrote back simply, "Thank you for your honesty. I hope you find peace. I wish you and the children well." Logan came by one afternoon, alone. He stood on the porch, shifting from foot to foot, his eyes red-rimmed and tired. "Mom, I don't know how to fix this," he said. "I messed up. I let Emily push you too far. I let myself believe you'd always be there, no matter what. I'm sorry." I looked at him, my heart aching with love and disappointment. "You're my son, Logan. I'll always love you. But I can't be everything for everyone anymore. You have to learn to stand on your own." He nodded, tears slipping down his cheeks. "I want to try. I want to be better. For you, for the kids, for myself." We hugged, and for the first time in a long time, I felt hope. Not the desperate hope that things would magically return to the way they were, but the quiet hope that comes from knowing you've done the right thing. Even when it's hard, Dylan and Olivia became my closest companions. We spent long evenings talking, laughing, and planning for the future. Olivia helped me start a small baking business, something I'd always dreamed of but never had the time or confidence to pursue. We set up a stall at the local farmers market, selling pies, cookies, and homemade bread. The work was hard, but it was mine. I felt a sense of pride and accomplishment I hadn't known in years. The community responded with warmth and support. People stopped by my stall to chat, to share their own stories of family drama and redemption. I realized that my experience wasn't unique, that so many women had been taken for granted, had given too much, had lost themselves in the process of caring for others. I listened, I offered advice, and I found healing in the connections I made. One evening, as I was closing up the stall, a woman approached me. She was older, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. "I heard what you did," she said. "I wish I'd had your courage when I was younger. You've inspired me to stand up for myself, too." Her words stayed with me as I walked home, the sun setting behind me, the air crisp and clean. I realized that my story wasn't just about loss and betrayal. It was about finding my voice, reclaiming my dignity, and building a new life on my own terms. But the story wasn't over yet. One morning, I received a letter from the church inviting me to lead a support group for women in the community. They'd heard about my journey, about the strength I'd found, and they wanted me to help others do the same. I hesitated at first, unsure if I was ready to take on such a responsibility. But as I read the letter, I felt a sense of purpose stirring inside me. I accepted the invitation and soon found myself surrounded by women who had their own stories of heartbreak and healing. We laughed, we cried, we shared our struggles and our triumphs. I realized that I wasn't alone, that together we could build something beautiful out of the ashes of our pain. As the months passed, my relationship with Logan and Emily slowly began to heal. They learned to respect my boundaries, to ask for help instead of demanding it, to appreciate the love I offered without taking it for granted. The grandchildren visited often, their laughter filling the house with joy. I cherished every moment, knowing that I had earned this peace, this happiness, this new beginning. And as I stood in my kitchen, the scent of cinnamon and fresh bread filling the air, I knew that I had finally come home to myself. Spring arrived with a gentle promise of renewal. The garden, which had been dormant and gray, burst into color: tulips, daffodils, and the first shy roses Tom had planted so many years ago. I found myself outside more often, hands in the soil, feeling the earth's quiet reassurance that life goes on. The children came to visit, sometimes with Logan, sometimes with Emily, sometimes just on their own. They brought laughter and stories, and I welcomed them with open arms, but I no longer felt the need to do everything for everyone. I had learned to say yes when I wanted to, and no when I needed to. The baking business with Olivia flourished. We spent Saturday mornings at the market, our stall always busy, our shelves empty by noon. People came for the pies and cookies, but they stayed for the conversation. I listened to their stories, shared my own, and realized that healing was not a destination but a journey, one that I was finally ready to walk. Logan and I rebuilt our relationship slowly, brick by brick. He apologized often, not just with words but with actions, helping in the garden, fixing things around the house, showing up when he said he would. Emily too changed. She became more thoughtful, more present, more willing to listen. There were still hard days, still moments of tension, but we faced them together, as a family. One afternoon, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Logan turned to me. "Thank you, Mom, for everything, for not giving up on us, for teaching us what it means to be strong." I smiled, feeling a peace I hadn't known in years. We all make mistakes, Logan. What matters is what we do next. As the sky faded from gold to indigo, I realized that my story was not just about loss and betrayal, but about hope and redemption. I had reclaimed my dignity, my place in the family, and my sense of self-worth. I had learned that it's never too late to start over, to set boundaries, to demand respect, but the story wasn't over yet. As I closed the door that night, I found a letter waiting for me on the mat, an invitation to speak at a women's conference, to share my journey with others who needed hope. I held the letter in my hands, feeling the weight of possibility, and knew that a new chapter was just beginning. The months after that Christmas felt like waking up from a long, uneasy dream. The house was quieter, but it was a peaceful quiet, not the hollow silence of loneliness. I found myself moving through my days with a new sense of purpose. I tended the garden, baked for the market, and spent long afternoons reading on the porch. The ache of betrayal faded, replaced by a gentle pride in what I'd survived and the boundaries I'd finally set. Logan and Emily's family changed, too. They learned to manage on their own, to ask for help only when they truly needed it. The children grew more independent, helping with chores, learning to cook, and even taking turns watching their younger siblings. When they visited, it was because they wanted to, not because they needed a free babysitter. Our time together became sweeter, more intentional. I cherished every hug, every story, every shared meal, knowing that I was no longer being taken for granted. Dylan became a more regular presence in my life. He called every week, sometimes just to chat, sometimes to ask for advice. He visited often, bringing Olivia with him. The three of us would sit in the kitchen, laughing over old stories, planning new adventures. Olivia's baking business flourished, and she often brought over new recipes to test. She told me more than once that watching me stand up for myself had changed the way she saw her own future. "You taught me it's okay to say no, Grandma. You taught me that love doesn't mean losing yourself." The support group at the church became a lifeline, not just for me, but for many women in the community. We shared our stories, our struggles, our victories. I listened to women who had been through their own storms, divorce, loss, betrayal, and I realized that my pain was not unique. We found strength in each other, and I found healing in helping others find their voices. One afternoon, as I was cleaning out an old drawer, I found a letter from Tom I'd never opened. The envelope was yellowed, the handwriting familiar and steady. I sat down at the kitchen table and read his words, tears slipping down my cheeks. If you're reading this, it means you've faced something hard. I want you to know how proud I am of you. You've always been stronger than you think. Don't let anyone make you feel small. You are the heart of this family, Evelyn. Never forget that. I folded the letter and tucked it into my journal, feeling Tom's love wrap around me like a warm blanket. I realized that standing up for myself hadn't just changed my life, it had changed my family too. We were stronger, more honest, more connected than we'd ever been. I had learned that love is not about sacrifice without end, but about respect, boundaries, and the courage to demand better. Would you have done the same? I often wondered how others would have handled my situation. Would they have fought, or would they have given in? I hoped my story would inspire others to find their own strength, to stand up for themselves, to believe that it's never too late to reclaim your life. As spring turned to summer, I received a letter from the community center, inviting me to lead a workshop for women learning to set boundaries. I smiled, feeling the promise of a hopeful future. I knew there would be challenges ahead, but I faced them with confidence, knowing that I had already survived the worst. I stepped out onto the porch, the sun warm on my face, and looked out at the garden in full bloom. I was no longer afraid. I was Evelyn, strong, resilient, and ready for whatever came next. If you've listened to my story, I want to ask you something from the heart. What would you have done in my place? If your own family tried to take advantage of your kindness, would you have stood up for yourself, or would you have kept saying yes just to keep the peace? Have you ever faced a betrayal so deep it made you question your own worth or the meaning of family? Maybe you've been the one everyone relied on, the one who always said yes, until you realized you were giving away pieces of yourself with every favor, every sacrifice. I know I'm not the only one who's felt invisible, underestimated, or used by the people they love most. Maybe you've been through something similar, a family dispute, a painful divorce, a moment when you had to choose between your own happiness and someone else's expectations. Maybe you're still in the middle of it, wondering if you have the strength to finally say no. If so, I want you to know, you are not alone. Your story matters. Your voice matters. Share your story in the comments below. Tell us about a time you had to fight for your dignity, your home, or your happiness. Your words might be the encouragement someone else needs to take their first step toward healing. If you've ever felt the sting of betrayal or the relief of finally reclaiming your life, let us know. This community is here to listen, to support, and to remind you that you are stronger than you think. And if you found something in my story that resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Share this video with a friend, a sister, a neighbor, anyone who might need a reminder that it's never too late to stand up for yourself. Don't miss our next story. Subscribe for more true tales of courage, justice, and redemption. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to be erased. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for believing that every woman's story deserves to be heard.